After all that, while working in IBM with 2 kids and all this kind of stuff, you know how life in America is, right? So not enough help at home and so on. It's still, she tolerated a lot of my weird working and this and that. So that requires a lot of understanding and such. So it's not like you as an individual can do a whole lot if there isn't enough of a support structure, both at work and at home. But if you do some of these things and you also take the trouble to keep people informed, even if they don't ask for it, but you think it's relevant for them, whether it's IBM people or non-IBMers, later on all that helps in terms of getting reference letters for promotions or for awards, whether it's IBM awards or external awards and such. The problem that happens with some people is that they think, oh, he's a person who is only interested in query processing. Why should I tell him anything about recovery and so on? So they don't bother. But suddenly, when the time comes for one of these awards or this or that, they say, oh, I need to get a letter from an IBM fellow or a distinguished engineer. Who do I know? I talked to this guy for 2 minutes one time in the restroom. So maybe I'll talk to him and ask him whether he'll give a reference letter. Or for IEEE fellow. I sit in Bangalore, this head of the research lab never bothered to, involve me in any of the technical discussions. I didn't even listen to any of his presentations. He just thinks just because I happen to be in the neighborhood, he could ask me for a reference letter for IEEE fellow. I'm like, hey, you haven't bothered to have any serious technical discussions with me over a prolonged period of time. I can't just like that write a letter. I have to, in the letter say how I know you and why I think your work is a great piece of work, that you deserve to be a fellow and things like that. So you need to think about this as a long-term strategy in any organization, whether you are a faculty member or an industry guy, whether you are in research in industry or in products and services and so on. You need to have mentors and you also need to be a mentee of somebody else, as well as be a mentor for other people and connect with enough people in the course of your work so that your existence is known, not just that you exist, but actually what you do and some amount of detail about what you do. Have corridor conversations, don't go to lunch with the same set of people all the time, mingle with people in other groups, get to know about other things, move from one area to another. Just because I said be in the same area for a long time, that doesn't mean for all your life you stay in that area. You have to, shake out of your comfort zone and get into new topics. That might require a lot of investment upfront with no immediate return. Don't always look for an immediate return on investment. Some of these things are important for you to have a well-rounded personality. So that's what all this is saying, so people here gave me this thing. It would have been nicer if it had happened the year I had my silver reunion. It went up, but they didn't approve it for whatever reason. IEEE fellow and all that came. Then the National Academy of Engineering, even all these things, you need to be known before people will. I get this kind of random thing, oh, I looked at your resume, it looks good. So I think you are qualified to be my reference. Can you believe this? One professor from India writes to me this. I don't even know who this guy is. He is passing judgment on me that I am qualified to serve as a reference for him. I mean, this is the mind-boggling thing. I didn't even bother replying to this guy. First of all, I have to know who he is before I can write a reference letter. And he is asking me for a favor. And he is telling me he is impressed with my resume, that he thinks that I'm good enough for him to, stoop down to asking me to be his. What else? Yeah, so the other thing to note, people think unless you are a manager, you won't be visible at the higher levels and so on. This is totally bogus thing. Yeah, some companies may be messed up. They will be messed up ultimately. If you really want technologists to shine and for India to improve, I have another talk which is on, can India be an innovation superpower? This was a talk that the UC Santa Cruz people asked me to give. Some people said, oh, it's not a question of can, it's a question of when. I said, guess what? Not true. Does anyone think Russia is an innovation superpower? They had the largest number of scientists and technologists after the US. Just because there are enough humans, that doesn't mean necessarily that you can easily become one. So the point is, for a while, the CEO of IBM, the guy who was managing 400,000 employees and $100 billion kind of revenue, was my second line manager. Okay, you don't need to be, managing gazillion people necessarily for you to be reporting at that level and such. It's all a question of how much you are contributing, how much the company values the contribution. If, and I've told this to, various people, Nandan Nilekani, Premji and so on, that until those guys also start giving enough importance to the technologists in India and their companies, and they make statements like, we will respect you for what you contribute, not because of, how many people report to you or what the budget is that you control, you are not going to have enough people choosing to go for technical careers. And so this is something that has to be addressed, especially in the Indian context. And thankfully, in the US, there are enough companies that have a strong faith in the technical ladder that you don't need to become managers necessarily. This is not to say there aren't large number of technologists who are also at the same time managers. There are any number of IBM fellows who are also vice presidents, who have, lots of people reporting to them and so on. But that shouldn't have to be the case for them to succeed or be respected and such. Some people have the aptitude to do both. The problem in some organizations is that people are taking up management not because they are qualified or they have the credentials to do it, or they have the mindset, whatever, right? But just because they think that looks cool. When somebody asks for your business card, if the word manager is not there, in India a lot of times people seem to think, oh, this guy must be a loser. So that attitude has to change. And so for such reasons, some good technical people become managers, and guess what? Now it's a double whammy. You lose a good technical guy, you acquire a lousy manager. Because this guy is not a people kind of person, doesn't give a damn about, ensuring that the people that report to him have good careers and this and that. So there are more things to becoming a manager than just impressing potential in-laws or your neighbor or whatever, your vegetable vendor, whoever. So I'll stop with this. Maybe you guys can read or whatever. Any questions? Nope. Not even one question?
Take a few seconds to break.
That's another important thing to do. Speak. Don't just be, receiving stuff. So the point I have made also, this may be of some relevance. When you are competing with people halfway around the globe, in the US, people may do a little bit and then they'll make noise. This Indian thing of, I'll do big stuff, but I'll sit in my corner and glory will come to me. I shouldn't be publicizing my accomplishments, whatever. That might have worked in the dark ages, but not anymore. You have to market your stuff. Part of making your work become real is doing this other bit, follow through. Just because you are a techie guy like I've been, that doesn't mean that the marketing part is off your back. Marketing meaning not the product itself, but the idea or whatever, right? Even products, going and giving a talk on your product will, which you are now trying to improve with some fancy algorithm, will really show you how much you really understand what the heck is currently going on that you are trying to improve. So in general, explaining any algorithm and so on to a wider audience or documenting it, the process that you go through itself will show lots of holes in your thinking. So even if the ultimate thing is not published as a paper, the exercise of producing a paper itself will be worth the insights it gives you. So I used to say, I'll offer to give a tutorial on some topic about which I know nothing, only because that will then force me to learn that thing. And I want to be sure I don't become a fool in front of a whole bunch of people because I've stuck my neck out to say I'll give a presentation. It's only when you try to explain something to other people you know how little you know about that thing. Otherwise you may be thinking you know a lot about it, but yeah. Sure.
Personal question, sir. Whether there is no chance to do PhD in India for you, sir, we went to abroad.
Oh, so at that time I was here. There was absolutely no question of my doing the PhD in India, because remember I said at the time the IIT Madras thing, computer center, it started with only the master's level and a little bit of PhD thing. Because I did my own homework, I was already way beyond what the master's people were being taught. Because at the time, IIT Madras was very different from Kanpur, for instance. Our curriculum was unbelievably pre-specified, whereas the Kanpur system was more like the US system. They had more options with respect to what courses they could do and things like that. So I was already mentally prepared to go abroad. So in my case, even coming back was an issue, because I had made up my mind that I wanted to be in industrial research. There was absolutely no possibility at the time, in 1981, when I finished my PhD. If I had decided I was going to be in academia, I could have come back. But then again, there were all sorts of issues with respect to being able to publish papers and being able to go abroad. Much later, I knew of cases where junior people, even IIT Madras guys, Sudarshan and so on, they paid their own way to go present papers. They were in India at the time. After finishing their PhD in America, they came to India. There wasn't enough funds available for travel, so they spent money from their pockets to go get the papers. Now, so in fact, I cover a lot of that in that other talk, the Can India Be an Innovation Superpower? There's a lot more that needs to happen in India for us to go up in this ranking of universities, which we even talked about earlier today, in terms of number of publications. The top-notch university in India for research is supposed to be IISc, right? Even IISc produces minuscule number of PhDs compared to what even Chinese universities are producing these days. You can say, oh, this is all BS, PhD, this, that. Even if you, for the time being, ignore that, ours are probably equally BS, PhD theses, but there is a certain level of systematic way in which they are approaching it and so on. I've been to enough Chinese universities and deal enough with those guys that this whole mental thing about even all the things I've been saying. See, what was happening in my days, a whole bunch of us went abroad right after BTech, right? To do mostly masters, but a good number of them went for PhDs. Now, people are happy that brain drain has come down, but guess what? The fact that not so many people are going abroad after BTech, especially from IITs, on the surface it might be a great thing, except that it's not that those guys are then sitting here and doing masters and PhD. They're just joining the job stream. So it's a double whammy. US doesn't get all these guys to come there and do the fancy thing later on, nor does India get the benefit of these guys doing the fancy stuff right after their BTech. Or if at all they do anything, they go for MBA, right? Because this management craze. So again, you can find all sorts of discrepancies in what I'm saying, but on the average, this is the case. There are exceptions always. So this whole notion of long-term research mindedness has to improve, and for that to improve, there are a whole lot of ecosystem changes that have to happen. And that's where it's not any one thing that's going to make a difference. The government has set aside a lot of money. Now money is not an issue. Research funding is not an issue. There aren't enough people who want to do PhD. That's part of the problem. Because they don't think, hey, what the heck, I can make gazillion money being a call center guy or whatever kind of work even. I don't mind that boring stuff, but because it gives me a lot of money. I can buy the latest fancy phone, this, that, because the materialism has gone up the wazoo. And so those things become more important than this intellectual, I want to leave a legacy behind textbooks, this, that kind of thing. So it's attitudinal shift, even amongst uncles and aunts and grandpa, grandma, all those people have to think differently for this overall improvement. There's a question there.